Hi and welcome to the latest Trending Tech podcast. I'm Jeremy Cowan, co-founder of the Internet of Things site, IoT-now.com, and it's great to have you here for today's podcast. We're looking at smart metering and in particular examining a decentralized, secure data exchange for smart grid with embedded SIM. Let's go with eSIM for short. I'm delighted to be joined on the pod by three key speakers. The first is Loïc Bonvalet, who is Vice President for Product Management and Marketing at Kigen, and they are our sponsors today, so thank you to them. And to our other speakers today from Core and Energy Web. First, Loïc. Loïc's helping to facilitate the adoption and scalability of a secure, integrated, and cost-effective cellular IoT. In fact, he drives the entire Kigen portfolio from embedded solutions to services. And Loïc has more than 20 years of experience in telecoms, wireless, security, and IoT. We've worked together on previous webinars. Loïc, it's great to have you back here.
Thanks for having me, Jeremy. Pleased to be here as well.
And I'm delighted to say we're also joined by Marco Bijvelds, Senior Vice President for Europe and Asia Pacific at Core. And he has more than 13 years of IoT experience through senior management positions. Marco's adaptive to the fast-paced IoT industry, and he is successfully implementing Core's go-to-market product strategy. It's really good to have you here again, Marco.
Thanks for having me. Looking forward to the conversation today.
And we're also joined by Dr. Ioannis Vlachos, the Commercial Director for EMEA at Energy Web. He brings 15 years experience working with large corporations and educational institutes worldwide in smart grids. He is a scientist, project manager, commissioning expert, and consultant. Ioannis has worked closely with both academia and industry in more than 30 countries and on projects that merge the worlds of energy and ICT. Welcome, Ioannis.
Great to be here, Jeremy. Thanks a lot.
Today, we aim for you to have three key takeaways from the podcast. First, what should smart energy players be looking for in terms of security, connectivity, and data choices? Second, understanding why the smart energy sector is changing with the Internet of Things. And finally, seeing how a joint solution future-proofs you and is brought by trusted partners like these working together. Let me turn to Loïc first to look at the issue of scaling. Loïc, there's a huge amount of change and transformation happening in the smart energy and smart metering marketplace. How has Kigen been delivering in this? And how does eSIM technology play into smart metering?
Yeah, so pleased to answer that first question, Jeremy. First of all, I think until a few years back, right, the smart energy domain was quite fragmented in terms of technology. But now you can see a growing adoption of cellular technology in smart metering in general. So starting with electricity, but also expanding to gas and water, thanks to the availability of new, more dedicated networks such as CAT-M, LTE CAT-M, and then BIoT notably. So this technology makes basically the deployment of networks simpler compared to, for example, a combination of technologies such as specific mesh network or specific short-range networks, etc. And the eSIM in this space is helping the smart energy companies, so notably the utilities, and also the smart meter maker to reduce the complexity of their connectivity needs management. And this is done by basically unifying and creating simpler, smaller number of SKUs, right? For example, for smart meters, which would embed an eSIM, right? And make various profiles available on this eSIM. So various connectivity profile allow you to connect into different operators and to basically manage the connectivity depending on deployment constraint, regulation of the specific country, specific mandates, etc. So in that space specifically, Kigen has been engaged, I would say, since the start of Kigen within ARM, So back in 2017 and 18, notably. So we did, for example, some first deployment with a company called Iskra Emeco, who was a smart meter manufacturer and who was basically deploying eSIM for their European deployments. Here in this specific collaboration together with Energy Web and Core, it's really about not only deploying an eSIM, but also providing extra functionality, leveraging this asset that is the eSIM to store secure credential.
Yeah, we're increasingly hearing about chip to cloud security. Why is this concept important for smart grid and smart energy players? And how does it benefit enterprises like?
Yeah, so security has really always been top of mind for the smart energy industry. And it's fairly simple to understand why. It's because it's a critical infrastructure. And you might have seen in the past some stories in the news about potential attacks on critical infrastructure. And that includes, for example, most notably electricity, but also to a certain degree, gas and water. If you can control the supply of any of these energy into a country, you can create havoc in that country, right? So really, it's very important to be able to trust the elements that are part of the network in a smart energy deployment. And to do so, right, you typically, the industry have typically assigned specific keys or credential to each element of this network. Now, the question comes, how is these keys and credential protected in such a device? And for example, before eSIM or secure hardware IP embedded inside the meter, you were basically storing that maybe into non-volatile memory or with not a lot of protection. So basically someone who could get physical access to such a device could potentially modify or create a fake one that could access the network or create fake transactions, etc. So really, one of the benefits of going cellular for the smart energy industry is that you get by default a very secure asset, which is the embedded SIM card. And you can use that asset for allocating credentials that ensure chip to cloud security. And that's really one of the purpose of this collaboration here.
So could you describe the Open IoT Safe initiative and how it works as part of the authentication process? And what challenges does this solve for enterprises?
Right. So Open IoT Safe is an extension of the IoT Safe concept that was created by GSMA, which is an open standard across developed and made available by many companies in the industry. And really, it came from the situation that many, I would say, SIM vendors and different players in the industry were coming up with their own proprietary solution to try to address this chip to cloud back by the SIM type of solution. And we really wanted to simplify that and have a uniform approach that is agreed by many connectivity and SIM players. And that was really what IoT Safe is about. Now, Open IoT Safe is, I would say, the kind of extension of that done by Kigen, which is really focused around open principle. That is, that it's leveraging, really the standard defined technology in GSMA, and also empowering the OEM, the one who builds the device, right, to have credentials that they will own and manage, notably with their eSIM, for example. So really now that this asset is present into all these smart meter, it really becomes, I would say, an asset and property of the OEM, and they can manage their security relatively independently of their connectivity constraint, right? Maybe they will have to switch connectivity profile or to meet a specific regulatory requirement in such country, right? That doesn't change the scheme that is established for the security with IoT Safe. And that's really the fundamental of this. So how does it practically work? It basically is an application. IoT Safe is an application, or we call it in the SIM world an applet, which will hold credentials that are inserted during secure manufacturing of the SIM card, of the eSIM specifically, okay? And these will be used to basically bootstrap secrets and credentials that will establish the operational security really from the meter all the way to the backend. That's at a very high level the key concept behind IoT Safe.
Thank you, Loic. That very neatly brings us to Marco, looking at eSIM connectivity. This joint solution is all about how smart grid players can leverage networks like cores to benefit from scaling. Marco, can you tell us how you support rollouts and achieve scale for more data secure devices?
Yeah, so first of all, I think the notion that security has been blocking the growth of IoT is an important one. I think Loic was mentioning that as well. Scaling just requires inherently secure solutions, and this solution actually does that. But apart from the security, the operational scalability has to be there as well, right? So a customer would like to have a device work out of the box. It should be all pre-integrated. It should be zero touch in terms of provisioning. That's important to reach scale. Also, you have to bear in mind that since those devices of the utilities are typically very long in the field, it has to be future-proof. We've been seeing the pain of sunsets that are happening globally for deployments. We know that solutions have to be future-proof in order to make the business case work for the utilities. So that's another aspect to make it operationally scale. Thirdly, which may be less relevant for DSOs, but more so for OEMs, so the actual device manufacturers, you want to have a single device that works globally in order to simplify the logistics, the assembly, the manufacturing, and everything related to that. So those items from an operational perspective are very important. And eSIM is key in this, right? It's a true enabler to simplify those things. And especially if we combine IoT Safe with the blockchain technologies that we're discussing today, that gives a very strong, secure, fully integrated solution that works out of the box, authenticates to the cloud, and so on. But we should not forget that all has to be orchestrated. How do you manage all those devices if you have multiple flavors in terms of SKUs, which still will be the case generally? You need to be able to access a single platform to manage your future base, to manage your legacy base, and basically have access to your fleet. That orchestration is what we do. We're integrated with many carriers worldwide, so that means we don't just, let's say, support that single MNO, but truly multiple carriers are being supported, including private networks that we can orchestrate, which is another advantage of eSIM. A tendency of utilities to move more and more into the private network space can be orchestrated to that single platform. And that's where Core plays actually. And that's where the joint solution of Kigen, EnergyWeb, and Core comes together.
That's very reassuring. So how should smart grid players engage and evaluate the choice of connectivity technologies, Marco? And what should they be looking for in a partner for the future?
Yeah, so I think it depends on the type of a player that you're looking at. So a DSO is obviously very different from an OEM with different requirements. And if you look at DSOs, some DSOs actually want to be an MVNO, a mobile virtual network operator themselves, which is again very different from DSOs that just want to have their devices connected. So from that perspective, there's no single answer. But in any case, I would suggest that you're looking for a partner that can help you in your IoT journey, because in the end, it's not just about getting your devices connected to connectivity. There's much more to it, right? You need to design your hardware, you need to design your network, you have to sustain your base. So there's a lot of steps alongside connectivity that are important in that whole IoT journey. And we've developed a 7-step customer journey for that is actually addressing all those items. Looking for a partner that actually can help you with those is a very good advice in our view, to truly have you focus on your core business, because that's what it's all about. You want to focus as an utility on your, let's say, value add activities, and not just on the things that are almost necessary even for that. So look for that. And when it comes to connectivity, you should look for a partner that understands eSIM inside out. It's a new technology. It's still under evolution, right? We're still working on new standards. So you have to be able to trust your partner to work with you, create a joint roadmap, but also to be able to help you in operational issues, because you will come across those when implementing and when deploying those. So I would say, make sure that you choose your partner, be able to focus on your own core activities while you outsource the rest of the activities to your partner. I think that's important.
And what are some of the key areas of change that you think energy companies need to be aware of? And we've already had a reference to sunsetting, but I'm sure there's a lot more that should be said on that and on other areas.
Yeah, so I think the sunsetting is obviously a learning point for the industry. And we've seen that coming a long time, but still, I think decisions have been made in the past that may not have been the most optimal in hindsight. And so I think that's a big learning. So in that sense, there's still work to be done over the next few years when the networks will sunset, 2G will sunset in some regions. In the US, obviously, we already have seen that. So we've already had the pain. But preparing for that transition is just key. Make sure that you learn from the past. Make sure that you're ready for that, let's say, new deployment. Many of the utilities will have experience now with deploying at large scale, but preparing for that is a different thing, right? So we were talking eSIM. eSIM is a different technology. It's not fundamentally different in the sense that it's still establishing the connectivity for a device, but there's much more to it because you have to be able to manage the profiles. You have to make sure the device is interoperable. So there's a lot of things that you have to think through to be ready for that future deployment. Also, you have to choose a technology for your connectivity, which there are more of nowadays than there used to be before. Loic was mentioning NB-IoT, LTM. I was mentioning private networks. There's a variety of technologies you can choose from, and let's say making sure that you're prepared for that, not just from a technical perspective, but also from an operational perspective, is fundamental in being future-proof and being ready for that transition that we're looking at.
Thank you, Marco. And Johannes, to complete the smart metering picture, can you help us a bit on decentralization? Specifically, can you explain how decentralized solutions support and foster this energy transition?
Yeah, no, thanks for the question, Jeremy. So from my perspective, the main barrier for the acceleration of the energy transition nowadays is mainly related to the way that energy markets are currently structured. So the regulatory requirement in most countries worldwide requires that small-scale flexibility assets such as residential batteries, electric vehicles, heat pumps, and others participate in energy markets only via their representation by an aggregator. Now, considering a more direct market design where flexible assets, irrespectively of their capacity, can directly bid into an energy market, will minimize their marginal costs, and at the same time will promote and foster the participation of these small-scale distributed energy resources in energy markets. So there is a clear need of direct participation of assets in markets, and this is a true need for energy markets right now. And also this requirement has been identified and considered to be an overarching principle in a recently report published by the ENSOE and the European associations representing distribution system operators that was published in June 2021. Actually, the name of the report is a roadmap on the evolution of the regulatory framework for distributed flexibility, where in this report, we see for the first time in a policy document the term directly. So the report mentions that access to all markets for all assets should be either directly or aggregate. So this is where blockchain technology comes into play. So blockchain technology via the concept of digital identities and verifiable credentials and self-sovereign identities in general provides the necessary tools to allow this direct access of small-scale DERs into energy markets. And when we are talking about, let's say, to explain a little bit this technical jargon, when we are talking about SSI, self-sovereign identity is a growing paradigm that promotes individual control over identity data rather than relying on external authorities. This is in contrast to the current paradigm where most exchanges of identity data rely on communication and trust with an external, often centralized authority. So decentralized identifiers, DIDs, and verifiable credentials are two of the most important components of SSI. And through DIDs, we can create identifiers that controlled and generated by individuals or organizations, and then can be used to identify any subject, such as a non-tangible asset, a customer, or an organization. And at the same time, verifiable credentials is a secure and most importantly, let's say, machine verifiable digital credential, which respects a standard data model. So this is why we're super excited to bring together with Kigen and Core Wireless the digital identities on the SIM card itself.
And if anybody wants to follow up on the report that you mentioned, Ioannis, we'll get that link from you and drop it into the transcript. Then people can reference that for themselves. Coming back to the discussion, what is it about digital identities then that makes this technology so attractive to actors in the energy ecosystem? And what's new in this area?
Yeah, great point, Jeremy. I think digital identities may be one of the most disruptive concepts when applied to the energy sector. So digital identities implemented via this notion of decentralized identifiers allow assets, systems, and in general, energy market participants to hold their self-sovereign identities. So by themselves, SSI, self-sovereign identities, allow any asset, any system, or any market participant to represent itself in an energy market in an end-to-end verifiable manner. And the key word here is verifiable. So this, in extension, allows for example, assets holding a DID to send an offer for a service, for example, an offer for flexibility service to a decentralized marketplace, and the receiving end to be in the position to verify in a cryptographical way the source of the offer, and that the offer message has not been modified in between by any malicious third party. So the biggest challenge here is how you assign digital identities to energy assets, such as, for example, smart meters or smart inverters, in a way that is at the same time secure, but also cost efficient. And this is where I think we add value via this collaboration between Kigen, Core Wireless, and Energy Web, because we are focusing upon how we solve this challenge of assigning digital identities to energy assets in a way that is cost efficient, and taking also into account the fact that, starting, for example, from smart meters, that they use and rely on the GSM network for their communication with the backend systems. How we find a way to include a DID in the SIM card in a straightforward, open, and cost-efficient manner. So in a nutshell, Kigen, Core Wireless, and Energy Web developed an open source software kit for embedding digital identities directly into SIM cards and thus to any asset by leveraging, as Loic mentioned at the beginning, IoT safe open standard, and I'm highlighting the word open here, from a GSM association. So this solution with the close collaboration with OEMs is expected to significantly accelerate the energy transition and democratize and decentralize the way energy markets are currently designed and operate.
So, Ioannis, how do decentralized technologies such as blockchain benefit third-party users? And can you give us some examples of how that helps?
Yeah, that's a great question, Jeremy. I think the public and open architecture of the majority of blockchain solutions is what will allow any third party to leverage the benefits that come along with blockchain. This philosophy of a public and open decentralized architecture lies at the core of Energy Web as its most, let's say, important value. Public and open for a client means no vendor lock-in, while at the same time, it allows OEMs to minimize their time to commercialization. So at Energy Web, we were focused on bringing to market 3 specific solutions in partnership with energy companies around the world since our incorporation back in 2017. So these solution areas represent sectors where decentralized technology can create significant business value for enterprises. And we believe that the decentralized multi-tenant environments required for these solutions are only possible with public blockchains, open architectures, and we see more and more enterprises are ready to embrace them. So in a nutshell, these 3 solutions are our enterprise asset management solution that is built on the W3C open and administered decentralized identities standard. And as an example, I can reference to real world implementations that Energy Web has done with Stedin, a DSO from the Netherlands, where we worked together with them to build their identity and access management solution. Recently, we launched in California together with California ISO a Flex Alert system, and also we can reference here our works with Vodafone as well our work with Kigen and Core Wireless that we are currently discussing. Also, a second group of solutions is the so-called enterprise data exchange that enables different combinations of energy companies, prosumers, and individual devices such as electric vehicles, residential batteries, etc., to exchange and process granular data in a secure, verifiable, and decentralized way. And also our third, let's say, solutions group is our Green Proofs platform, which is our solution focusing on enable next generation traceability for low, zero, or negative carbon supply chain. So our primary work here is focused on renewable mined cryptocurrency, 24/7 renewable energy matching, and sustainable aviation fuel. And the development of these solutions heavily rely on digital identities and verifiable credentials, which makes our work with Kigen and Core Wireless of paramount importance.
Johannes, thank you. Loic, presumably this model to engage third parties through a trusted ID exchange, that can be used elsewhere in other sectors, can't it? What other applications can benefit from this kind of thing?
Yeah, Jeremy, definitely. I think one that often comes to mind for me is the medical space, right? Where today you have also quite a fragmented ecosystem in terms of, platform sharing information between patients and doctors, as an example, right? And the portability is fairly poor. I mean, I'm facing this personally quite recently, for example, to migrate from one set of platform and data to another system. And so here, the ability to say people getting control of their data, of their medical data, right, and decide with who it's shared in a very trusted way by really making sure that sender and recipient are totally identified in a decentralized manner is really something that I think has legs for the future, and to try to aggregate, and lower the costs of this type of function, which are today very expensive and very ad hoc on a per country, per provider basis, right? So I think it's really one example that comes to mind there. And along those lines, we did a collaboration, for example, with Zariot that we announced also at MWC, which is really focused around this peer-to-peer use case and peer-to-peer engagement. I control the data and I control where it's sent, and I don't need intermediate and third parties to have any say into that.
So, Johannes, in a few words, how can listeners start using the solution?
Thanks, Jeremy. In the next few weeks, Energy Web will release the software development kit that was co-developed with Kigen and Core Wireless as an open source library, of course. So this will allow any third party, any OEM that would like to leverage IoT safe, open GSMA standard to simply download the SDK and use it to assign digital identities to any asset, any energy asset, or even any medical asset, as for example, Loic mentioned. So Energy Web is currently working with different OEMs to port the SDK to different microprocessor architectures in an effort to minimize the time to commercialization for the OEMs.
And Marco, what's the next step after that?
Yeah, so I think it all starts with a good conversation, right? I mean, this is all about technology, and the things that we jointly have developed is quite impressive, to be perfectly honest. With that said, we need to understand what kind of business problem that we're trying to solve. So I think that's the first conversation that we'll always have with the customer, to see what kind of direction that we need to take. Like I said, we've got a 7-step approach to go through the customer journey, and going from, let's say, the design to actual implementation and sustainment is important to us. The good news is that we've done the heavy lifting with the pre-integrated solution that we discussed today. So I think that's a very good starting point. But I'm looking forward to have a conversation with the customer to see, okay, what's your problem, what we're trying to solve, and how can we help you with that?
Excellent. Well, gentlemen, I want to thank you all for your expertise and for sharing your time. Thank you first, Loic.
Thanks a lot, Jeremy. It was great to talk with you today.
And Marco, my thanks to you too.
Great to be here. Thank you for having me.
And finally, it's been great to have you here too, Johannes. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, Jeremy. Thank you.
Finally, a big shout out to Kigen, our sponsors for this podcast. Plus, my thanks, as always, to our worldwide audience. Don't forget, you can subscribe to the Trending Tech podcast wherever you found us today. And although it may not seem a big deal, it means a lot to us if you can give us a 5-star rating and leave a review, because it helps new listeners find us and join our growing global audience. Thanks if you can. So until next time, keep safe and keep checking iot-now.com, where you'll find more tech news, plus videos, top-level interviews, event reviews, and much more. And join us again soon for another Trending Tech podcast looking at enterprise digital transformations. Bye for now.